Thank you guys for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Nelson. Started a little bit late. I really apologize for that, but I just needed to make sure that I had everything that was ready for the show. If you guys tuned in previously, my microphone was not my friend the other day, so I went and I made sure that nothing bad was going to happen to during the stream. But regardless, as usual, we have our three segments. The first segment is going to be LeBron. I know you guys don't like to talk about LeBron, but I love talking about LeBron. And this time is going to be talking about what he had to say to the media about his son. Chris Paul is coming back from injury, so that could mean something for the Golden State Warriors. And as always, we're going to do a quick recap of the games that happened from last night. But before I begin with the show, as always, I'd like to remind everybody, please remember to... Oh, okay, that's a little bit odd. I don't know why that's not there. But just give me 1 second. I don't know why that wasn't there before, because I already did this, but okay. But anyways, as always, I remind everybody to please remember to tip and to donate to get your comments recognized. The link is in the description, as well as displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. That is streamelements.com/GSMC Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. So once again, the link is streamelements.com/GSMC And with that, we can go out of the way and get this first segment started, which is going to be about LeBron James and what he had to say for his kid. I'm just going to pull up the quote right here, just so I can make sure that I get it right. But essentially, LeBron James, as we all know, greatest basketball player of all time, and if not, top 2 basketball player of all time, and he's been that way since he started his career. He's always been the that sort of kid that's like been labeled as the best. And hold on, because like right now the internet is really bad. But essentially, he grew up like from high school, like all the way down to the NBA, expected to be the greatest, expected to be this savior of the league, expected to be the next MJ. That was the persona that was what he grew up with. And that's a lot of pressure for any teenager to grow up with. Hold on just 1 second. I'm trying to find the actual quote. But that is ridiculous expectations for anyone. Oh, the post was deleted. That's what this is. Okay, so LeBron deleted the post about it, but I recently just looked at it, and he says in the tweet, "Can y'all please just let the kid be a kid and enjoy college basketball? The work and results will ultimately do the talking no matter what he decides to do. If y'all don't know, he doesn't care what a mock draft is. He just works. Earned, not given." So obviously, this was in response to the recent ESPN mock draft. Before Bronny like actually started playing for USC, a lot of people assumed that just because like he's LeBron's son, that he's going to be this force of nature, and he's going to be the exact same as his father in terms of overall greatness and expecting like meeting everybody's expectations. That's sort of like the stipulation that's being put on Bronny James right now. Like he has to be like his father, and he has to do this and he has to do that. He's expected to be good right out of the gate. Like I don't know if you guys know who Juju Watkins is, but she's a female WNBA player. No. She's a female NCAA women's basketball player for the same school that Bronny is, and she just broke their record as like their women's record for most 30-point games, and she's only a freshman. This is the type of thing that's expected from Bronny, like breaking a record in his freshman year. That is the type of basketball that's expected from someone like Bronny James. And his play on the court, while it's not bad in my opinion, a lot of people think it is bad. Why? Because he's not doing what LeBron is doing. And LeBron no, like we all know that, like in most of the offenses that LeBron has run, if he doesn't score 30 or he doesn't score like 25, get 7, if he doesn't do like an average 20, 25, 7 and 7 stat line or like anything more than that, because he's never had a stat line like that, then that's when the team wins. But if he doesn't do that, that's when the team loses. But with Bronny, on the other hand, as of right now, he hasn't really been as good of a scorer as most people would like. Granted, obviously, like that's what happens when you when your heart stops for a few seconds, and you had to go through surgery. That's like people often forget that Bronny had to go through surgery, so he's not at 100% yet, both here in his body and here up in his mind. So obviously, with that in mind, like there's going to be a lot of hate from the media coming towards him, and it's really difficult. I would hate to be in a Bronny's position right now, because there is so much expectation that is expected from you, from everybody else. Like as a player, it's expected around you, and you have to be the next LeBron, essentially. Like your name is literally Bronny James, and you have this ridiculous amounts of expectations, and it's like you can't let up for 1 second, otherwise the media is going to be on top of you like LeBron. And that's not something, I don't think that's something that any teenager wants to go through, especially like a teenager in Bronny's position, where he has it. I don't want to say he has it easy, but like, I mean, obviously having a billionaire dad makes it so that way you can get whatever you want, even though LeBron is incredibly cheap. But regardless, like I feel like this tweet about letting the kid be a kid, and like he obviously got a lot of hate for it, of course, but I think this is him like speaking from the experience of what he went through as an 18-year-old, because I wasn't born around the time, but when LeBron was 18 or like 17, literally just a senior in high school, he was put on newspapers, he was put on like TV shows, he was being asked questions. There was this one time in an interview where I don't remember exactly what was asked, but I do remember that he was asked if he can be better than like MJ or something like that. Their expectations for that kid, for LeBron James, when he was 18 years old and just 18 years old, is ridiculous. And that amount of pressure, like he's already lived through it, and I feel like he's talking like now, like as if let my son be able to be a kid. You guys wouldn't let me be a kid, so don't make that same mistake with my son. I feel like that's sort of what he's sort of like trying to portray in this message. And I mean, who better knows about this type of lifestyle than LeBron James? And like, it's really difficult for a child, let alone like, well, not really a child, but I mean, surprisingly, I know it looks surprising, he's younger than me. It's really tough because, like, again, he still has these ridiculous expectations. Even now, like, as being the oldest player in the league, he still has these ridiculous expectations that he needs to follow. And so if anyone knows it better, he does. It's really tough for Bronny. And just looking at some of the, just looking at all of like the threads that are responding to LeBron's tweet, like they're really negative towards Bronny James for no reason. Like I feel like, I mean, granted, that might have been a response given how LeBron tweeted like a while ago saying, "Man, Bronny definitely better than some of these cats I've been watching on League Pass today. Shit lightweight, hilarious." That's what he said. Ooh, pardon me for that, but that's what the quote said. And that's what LeBron said in the tweet. And obviously, like, on it, now that I think about it, they might be hating on him because LeBron was the one who gave Bronny James that hype in the beginning. And now he's saying, can y'all just let the kid play? Like, now that somewhat makes a little bit of sense why people are hating on LeBron for that. Like, I am a LeBron fan, but I'm not going to be delusional and say that, like, I mean, okay, he set himself up. He just set Bronny up there because, like, now he's responsible for that because he put a lot of expectation on his son. Even though, like, granted, you're supposed to expect that expectation. Like, you're supposed to expect, like, the media to be on you. You're supposed to expect the media to, like, have you up here, like in their business, and you expect, like, it's expected for someone who's named Bronny James. And, like, LeBron, like, he may have set him up, but at the same time, it's like, it might not have even been a setup. It might have just been, oh, let's see how my son would react if I were to tweet this, and like maybe he'll put on a show like on the spot and prove to everyone that he's him, because that's usually like how some people like would respond. Some people would take that, and they would respond by playing exactly like how they exactly like what LeBron said they would play. Like, I guess he was sort of expecting that from Bronny, but who knows? And ESPN, but yes, then again, ESPN removed Bronny from the 2024 mock draft. And I mean, I can't really blame them. Granted, like, Bronny as a player right now, again, his offense isn't where it needs to be, but his defense is very, very elite, which is something that a lot of people notice, but, you know, they don't really pay attention to. So, but regardless, like, do I really think this is going to, like, affect his draft stock? No. I still think that Bronny's going to be drafted number 1, but because LeBron wants to play with his son, and whichever team gets Bronny is the team that's going to get LeBron, in my personal opinion. Now, obviously, like, there's rumors going around that Bron is going to be in like a 6-figure deal with the Los Angeles Lakers really soon, but I seriously don't think he's going to like take that over playing with his son if he can. Granted, if Bronny doesn't get drafted now, it looks like we might have another year with LeBron, like just regular LeBron and no Bronny, because again, LeBron said that he wanted to play in the NBA with his son, and I believe that when LeBron plays in the NBA with his son, he'll either do it for 1 or 2 seasons, and then he's going to announce his retirement. And he's 50-50 on the tour. He said it in the All-Star break. But regardless, like, I still think that he's really, really adamant about playing with his son. And it's really tough right now. They're really in a pretty difficult spot. But with that, we're out of time for the first show segment. And tune in for the second segment where I talk about Chris Paul returning from injury. And before I break off into the break, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think that should just let the kid be a kid? Or do you think that we gotta pester him and be all up in his business and like criticize him when he's not the player that we think he should be? You guys let me know in the comments, but I will be right back after this short break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be talking about Chris Paul returning from his injury, as what that could entail for the Warriors, what that could mean for like their playoff spots, what that could mean going on into the season. But before I begin and before I take a deep dive into that, I'd like to remind everybody, as always, to please remember to tip and to donate to get your comments recognized. The link is in the description as well as below the ticker on every single show segment. Once again, the link is streamelements.com/GSMC Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself, the host, you guys, the viewers. Once again, the link is streamelements.com/GSMC And with that out of the way, we can go right ahead and break off into our second segment, which is going to be talking about Chris Paul, or if you're aware of the NBA meme, Rajon Rondo. Only people who aren't casuals are going to get that joke. But regardless, Chris Paul comes off the bench for Golden State. Recently, however, he's been through an injury, so he hasn't been in the rotation as much as he was previously, or like at all. But when Chris Paul is the type of player, like, he's one of those great, like, his longevity can be rivaled with LeBron James, in my personal opinion, because Chris Paul he's been the same, like, I wouldn't really say, like, the same, like, in terms of production, but he's been, like, that same player. Like, no matter what, Chris Paul can always bring value to a team. That's what I've noticed watching him play through all of these years. When he was on the Hornets, when they were from New Orleans, the New Orleans Hornets or something like that, and he was arguably like their best player, and like he would the impact that he would bring with his points and his assists and how elite he is at running the pick and roll is astonishing. And it definitely, like, a lot of people were inspired by his game in the pick and roll, because he has this mid-range that he loves to shoot from the pick and roll that it goes in like 9 out of 10 times every time I see him play. And through that mid-range shot, because we all know that mid-range shot is sort of dying, he's been thriving in this league. Like, every single time he comes off the screen, since the center believes he's going to, like, take a layup because he's really good at finishing the ball, he shoots the mid-range, since, like, 9 times out of 10 it's always open, and he is so automatic from there. And it doesn't matter the age. It doesn't matter if it's Chris Paul on the Suns, if it's Chris Paul on the Clippers, if it's Chris Paul on the Warriors now. It's automatic. And he's that type of player that, like, with that longevity, has been able to bring value to his team on the offensive side of the ball and is able to lead them to regular season wins. Now, I say regular season wins because despite everything that I said about Chris Paul, he is arguably one of the most notorious playoff chokers in NBA history. And he's one of those chokers, and like it really, like, no disrespect whatsoever when I like call him that, but it's like it's true. It's like he's lost several series when he should have won. He was part of the Clippers blowing a 3-1 lead the first time, not the second time. And he's also like had the most 2-0 leads blown in recent memory. He blew a 2-0 lead in the finals against the Milwaukee Bucks, and that was the most recent time. And that was the only time he's been close to winning a championship. Every other time, he's only ever made it to the second round or get eliminated in the first round. Except for when he was on Houston that one year in 2018, where he went down with an injury in arguably the most important game of the entire series. And this is sort of like what I mean by him being like a choker. And while his numbers in the playoffs aren't bad, he's one of those players that it's like you could just tell. And like his numbers don't translate to like him being bad in the postseason. It's just you could just tell. I mean, a 2-0 series lead blown here, getting injured in the playoffs here, blowing a 3-1 lead here, scoring only 12 points in one game here in an elimination game. Game 7 against on OKC, only scoring like 10 points or something like that against the Houston Rockets. He did not have a great game against that Houston Rockets, and he didn't show up. And he's had that tendency of just not showing up on the biggest stage. But with that out of the way, like, I'm not talking about the playoffs. Right now we're talking about the regular season and what he could do on the Golden State Warriors. Now, people didn't really like this fit. I think this is like a great fit because Chris Paul is like, he's a fantastic point guard. He's a great point guard. And Chris Paul's playmaking combined with Klay Thompson and Steph Curry coming off the ball and running screens and like flares and all that stuff, it's just a recipe for disaster because Chris Paul will know where to put the ball and when to put the ball in the spot that Steph Curry needs to score. And I feel like that's something that Draymond does relatively well, while at the same time setting screens. But now they have two players to do that. So, and not only that, but Chris Paul can also operate the pick and roll just in case things aren't going like the team's way or they need to get a basket. Like, that's a reliable shot to go to. And an interesting dynamic that I'm thinking about right now is Chris Paul and Klay Thompson coming off of the bench. And that might prove to be like a very competent duo. Like Chris, again, like I said earlier, like running the flare screens and running like off-ball screens with Steph Curry and Klay in the lineup. But now this time, it's just Klay in the lineup. So I feel like this could be really good, a really good lineup for the Golden State Warriors. And I think maybe they should stick with Klay Thompson coming off the bench to help Chris Paul and that bench. Not that Chris Paul needs help with the bench, obviously, but that would give him some more firepower. Granted, even though like Klay Thompson hasn't really been himself recently in a lot of these games, it doesn't matter because Chris Paul, he's the type of player that makes his teammates better. So I have a feeling that maybe with Chris Paul back in this lineup, and with how Klay Thompson he's been a little bit shaky coming off the bench, but he's also had his moments when he was off the bench. So I have a feeling if Chris Paul's in that lineup and helps him be as consistent as he can be, I have a feeling that we might see like the return of Headband Klay, Game 6 Klay, all of those nicknames, third quarter Klay, all of those nicknames that Klay Thompson has, because those names are derived from some of the best games that he's had as a player, where he just couldn't miss a single shot. So, with Chris Paul coming off the bench, do I think that the Warriors have a better chance of making it to the playoffs as opposed to making it in the play-in? Absolutely. And I think that they could go, so far, like, they've been playing really well. So they could go on a really nice win streak, and that could put them in a good spot, really high in the playoffs, because of how close the Western Conference is in records with everybody else in the standings. I'm just going to pull up the standings right now, and it looks like the Warriors are their 10th, meaning they hold the last spot in the play-in. But the game difference between 10th and 5th is 3 games, meaning if they win 3 and either one of those guys like loses, then they're all the way up in the 5th spot of the playoffs. So it's all about playoffs are all about matchups, and it's all about it's also about who can get home court advantage first most of the time. Sometimes, because home field advantage in the playoffs is extremely underrated, in my opinion, to some people. And obviously, people think that oh, it's a home, it's like they're away, so it's like they're obviously going to have a disadvantage. But it's way more apparent than that. It's the difference between playing in a playoff game versus playing in a regular season game. Not to mention the fan noise being different in both of those types of games. It's a completely different story. And some players might be able to handle the pressure in the regular season, but they might not be able to handle the pressure because it's a playoff game. But that's what separates the great players from the elite players. And the elite players are the players that can turn it up whenever they need to, no matter what. And that obviously, that's the difference. But I think that these Golden State Warriors could hold a spot in the playoffs. They definitely have a better chance of doing that than the Lakers, in my personal opinion. And with that in mind, they might make it to the 5th or the 6th seed, where we will see them in the postseason matching up against. Let's see, who would they match up against if they would take the 5th? They probably match up against the Clippers or Denver, which, depending on how you feel, that might be a death sentence. Both of those teams are really, really good. So honestly, they might be better off if they try and get. They might be better off if they just try and get the 7th seed or the 8th seed. I understand that they have to play play-in games in order to get those. But if the T-Wolves and the Thunder stay in the top 2 spots, I feel like those would be the teams that you'd want to go up against in the first round, because the Thunder, especially the Thunder haven't made the postseason in a while. We don't know how Shai is going to play in the postseason, and I feel like that lack of experience, similar to how they beat Sacramento, is going to be their downfall. But with that, we are out of time for this second segment, so join in for the third segment, where I give a quick recap of all of the NBA games that went down last night. So I will be right back after this short break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be giving a quick recap of the games that went down from last night. There weren't that many games that went down last night, given how most of the games went down on Sunday. So honestly, since I didn't go over a lot of the games that on Sunday because of the recent problems on the last stream, I'll go ahead and cover a lot. I'll go ahead and cover a lot of those games as well, since there weren't that many games that went on yesterday. So it's really no big deal. But let's start with the big one, and the Brooklyn Nets finally winning a game with against the Memphis Grizzlies, holding the Memphis Grizzlies to 86 points. Phenomenal defensive work right there, and this is the first win under the new interim head coach for the Brooklyn Nets. And looking at the box scores, everybody was relatively even in terms of scoring and in terms of production. So it was a great overall team win. I wish they would have won by a little bit more, given how bad the Memphis Grizzlies offense has been and how bad they were in that game. So I really wish they would have blown them out by more, but I digress. Bridges only had 11 points. Cam Thomas only had 14 points. Dennis Schroeder had 18. Dorian Finney-Smith had 13. Claxton had 10. So it's really starting to look like, when I look at this box scores, it honestly, I might get flamed for saying this, it looks like a college box score. Like, you know how in college where in NCAA basketball, there aren't that many, in some of the big teams, they might have like that one guy that scores a lot, but every other player, most of the times, a lot of the players would finish with relatively even numbers. Like they would finish with you'd see the box scores would be he has 18 points, he has 16, he has 14. The scoring is relatively spread, and it's much more spread in college because there's a different play style in college depending on the coach you have. A lot of coaches don't necessarily good coaches. In good programs, they don't necessarily run isolation. They share the ball between all of their players. And seeing as he used to be a head coach for UConn, I'm not really surprised that a lot of the scoring here, with all of the players in the lineup, is relatively balanced. And that is team basketball, and team basketball is always the right way to play because it's you have a team for a reason, and you have these players for a reason. So I'm all for this team ball. If this is going to be the new offensive set that Brooklyn wants to try running, where they're much more sharing the ball, I'm 100% down for that because they do have the talent to be able to share the ball evenly and be able to score just enough to be able to make it over that hump and be able to outscore the other team. And especially if the other team scores 86 points. I mean, Jaren Jackson Jr. and Lamar Stevens were the only bright spots on the offense for the Memphis Grizzlies. Jaren Jackson ended with 15 and Stevens ended with 17. The shooting from Memphis was really, really bad. It was horrible, the shooting from Memphis. Except from, obviously, Lamar Stevens. Lamar Stevens had 17 points, 8 of 9. He only missed one shot. But Jaren Jackson Jr., he had most of his points from the free throw line. He went 2 for 12. And G.G. Jackson went 1 for 13. Zaire Williams went 3 for 11. So, obviously, the shots just weren't falling down for Memphis in this game. But I don't care. I'm a Nets fan. Everyone knows that. Let's go Nets. So, with that game out of the way, let's go over to the other New York team who almost lost to the Detroit Pistons. Now, that might be a problem for the Knicks. Josh Hart ended the game with 23 and the and one bucket to make sure that they didn't lose to the Pistons. Jalen Brunson ended the game with 35 and 12. Jesus, he was LeBron in this game. He played 40 minutes. And who else? DiVincenzo ended with 21. So once again, the Villanova boys they're out there performing. Like, it's the fact that they decided to team up all of those players together is one of the smartest moves that an organization has done. Like, they knew that the chemistry there between all those players was strong. It's fantastic. And obviously, like, the team, when you're in a close game with the Pistons, obviously, like, that's a problem. Granted, I'm not going to say that the Pistons don't have talent, but they're the worst team in the NBA. Not recently, but in this season, they broke the record for having the longest losing streak ever in NBA history. They are bad, and when you are almost losing to them, like, look, they've only won 8 games. When you're almost losing to them and when the game is close, it's a serious problem, in my opinion. A serious problem. And Cade Cunningham ended the game with 32 points, and that was really the only bright spot on the offense for the Detroit Pistons. And that's really the only bright spot on the Detroit Pistons, if we're going to be real. Monty Williams had a lot to say after this game because there was apparently a no call that he felt should have been a foul, and it would have ended the game right there. But unfortunately, it wasn't called, and call it unlucky, but regardless, like, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't understand why they're, like, so uptight about this game, or like why Monty's so uptight about this game. You are not leading your team to anything. So what's the big deal? You're not leading your team to anything. The Raptors beat the Pacers because, like, the Pacers, I swear, they could beat any team in the entire league, and they can also lose to any team in the entire league. It's granted, I guess you could say that for all of the teams, but these guys, it's insane how they will, like, beat great teams and then they'll immediately lose to to mid teams. Scotty Barnes ended the game with a triple-double, 21, 12, and 12. Obviously the best player on the team for the Raptors and the best player going into the game. Who else had some great scoring? RJ Barrett had 24 points. I haven't really talked much about RJ Barrett, but he's been phenomenal ever since he went to Canada. That new environment for him has really changed him and his play style. And I will say he's a much more efficient scorer now on the Raptors. And I feel like that's a confidence thing because something about playing for a nation and for because since the Raptors are the only Canadian team, they sort of represent a lot more than just Toronto. They represent, like, all of Canada. And having your entire nation, like, cheer for you and be excited to have you on the team after being traded, obviously, like, that is a huge confidence booster because, like, you get to play at home and all of the fans and all of the people at home love you. So that change in scenery, definitely what RJ Barrett needed. And Emmanuel Quickley also showed up on the box scores with 19 points, and he shot 8 for 16 from the field. So very impressive from the Toronto Raptors, and a great win for them overall. I think that this changes anything in terms of their placement and like the expectations I have for them? No, not really. They're not going to make the play-in my I don't think they're going to. I don't think they're going to do anything once they get in the play-in, and they just have to rebuild. They're lucky that they're not anywhere in like the 14th or the 15th seed, or maybe they're unlucky because but they have the pieces, and they just need to get the chemistry. And just looking at like the standings in the East, good Lord, the Wizards and the Pistons. They've won 9 and 8 games. Like, what? What is that? Like, the fact that there's an argument for a team being worse than a team that just broke the record for losing consecutive games, like, that is absolutely insane to me. Because, like, what? How? Especially, like, Jordan, like, it just shows that Jordan Poole was just not what they were expecting whatsoever. He was not the player that anyone thought he was. And it's a little bit funny given how he was given the second Splash Brother name. But no, not the second, the third Splash Brother name. And now all of a sudden everybody just can't stand him or like just dislikes him. but the Indiana Pacers and their offense, they obviously, like, since they can't play defense and their defense is really, really bad and really lazy, they have to outperform on offense. And Haliburton wasn't there on the offense this time. So I wonder where all the Haliburton defenders are now, saying that he's better than Trae Young, saying that he's better than, like, De'Aaron Fox, all of those other point guards. Like, get out of here. He's not. But he ended the game with 9 points and 7 assists. Now, I don't know about you, but Trae Young would have ended the game with, like, 25 and 10. At least. He's consistent with it most of the time. He's not really consistent shooting the ball. Like, he will have those games where he's, like 8 for 24, or, like, 10 for 24, stuff like that. Really inefficient shooting. But he's had the most 30 and 10 games of anyone since entering the league, and it's really impressive. So Benedict Mathurin was actually the player that led the Pacers in scoring, 34 points. Pascal Siakam also showed up, 27 points per game. No, 27 points, 9 rebounds and 6 assists. But yeah, again, it all comes down to how well Haliburton plays. And most of these losses that I've reviewed on this podcast, it's all come down to Haliburton's play and the fact that he didn't produce enough in this game. And if the Pacers had some defense, they wouldn't have to worry about needing to produce on the offense all that much. But that's just my personal opinion. I mean, obviously, like, these NBA players, they're gonna follow the offense and whatnot, and they're not gonna really play that much defense because that's just the state of this league right now. And looking at the box scores, yeah, like, the team really underperformed in terms of shooting the ball. They shot 13 of 42 from 3, and, like, obviously, like, if that's not ideal, if you are the Pacers, like, you need to be able to score efficiently, given how bad, like, the offense is, like, the defense is on your team, and how every team can just score on you however they want. So with that in mind, again, my trajectory and, like, my trajectory for the Pacers is going to stay the same. I think they're only going to be a first-round team, and their defense is going to be the downfall of them in the playoffs. And my opinion is not going to change because so far the Pacers haven't shown me that it deserves any change. Like, it's been the same old thing. And there was also, speaking of De'Aaron Fox, I did talk about De'Aaron Fox for like a few seconds. The Kings recently matched up against the Miami Heat the other day, and the Kings ended up losing 121-110 with, again, no Jimmy Butler in the lineup. So the fact that the Heat were able to beat the Kings with no Jimmy Butler, serious problem. And it also just shows everyone before the playoffs start just how good the Miami Heat as a team actually are. Now, Caleb Martin ended the game with 16 points. Jamie Jacquez Jr., a rookie, really good, ended the game with 26 points. Bam Adebayo ended the game with 28 and 10. So great performance from the Miami Heat from when with Jimmy Butler out of the lineup. Kevin Love also showed up with 19 points on 15 minutes. He shot 6 of 9 from the field. Nice. He's obviously this Heat team, it's always been a great team, but once the playoffs roll around, most of the attention shifts over to Jimmy, which is unfair because playoff Jimmy, in my opinion, like, he's a myth. He's only good in the first round, and that's it. Every other time, he underperforms and does less than what he does in the second round. So, in my opinion, playoff Jimmy is just a myth. But a lot of people don't want to believe that, and a lot of people don't want to talk about that. Even when, like no one talks about Jimmy over the media. They only talk about him in the postseason. And it's like, why is it that he gets different treatment than most of the other stars in this league? Like, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, Joel Embiid, they get criticized for sitting out in a bunch of games. Jimmy Butler's doing that. Jimmy Butler's been doing that exact same thing because, like, he doesn't really care about, like, NBA accolades. So where's the talk coming from him? Where's the talk about him not being available for his team? Where's that? Why is it that only those star players get that treatment, but Jimmy Butler is like, oh, he's different, and like, oh, he's a playoff monster? He's not. He only plays well, and he only had one great series, like one great playoff series last year. Once he went into the second round, he started to play worse. He started to play a little bit like his usual self, which is not bad, but it's not great. It's good. And then when he went to the Eastern Conference Finals, he played worse than like he ever played before, because like it was as if the pressure was getting to him, and like no one was really talking about it because it's like, oh, playoff Jimmy, he hit 2 free throws, and like, oh, he closed the game out. Like there was more to that happened in the game than just the final minutes. But obviously, like the final minutes are more important. But like that's just me. I don't want to talk much about Jimmy Butler. Sabonis ended the game with 14, 10, and 14, so another triple-double. He's one of those players that's also a triple-double machine. Didn't get selected for the All-Star game, even though he's like top 10 in the MVP rankings, which is honestly hilarious when you think about it. Just shows like how the voters and like how the players, like they can't pick to save their lives. De'Aaron Fox ended the game with 27 points, 13 of 24, and Keegan Murray ended the game with 28 points, shooting 6 of 7 from 3. So, a little bit surprising that the Kings weren't able to pull out with this one. I mean, Kevin Huerter went 5 of 15, so I guess that makes sense. Like his production wasn't really helping much, but still, like and they shot 52% from the field, and they still lost. They shot better from 3 as well compared to the Heat, and they still lost, which is crazy to me. Like because they lost by 11, and it looked like they were like playing relatively well. Like that's a serious problem for the Kings, and it might be a good sign for the Miami Heat, given how they were able to beat the Kings by 11, with the Kings playing some great basketball without having their best player. Like, I mean, Miami does this like once in a blue moon. So I wouldn't be surprised if Miami makes another deep playoff run, just because like they're Miami. Like we've seen them do it before. We've seen it. Like, and I know I just talk bad about playoff Jimmy, but like we've seen him do a lot of things in the postseason that warrant that type of behavior and that warrant that type of thinking. And we have a little bit of more time for in this segment. So another game that I did want to talk about was because recently, like we were talking about the Kings, so I might as well talk about the Kings again. The Kings, they beat the Clippers the other day, 123-107. So the fact that they come into losing to Miami by that much, it's very odd. It's a serious problem, like for the Kings, in my personal opinion, because again, they played one of their best basketballs, overall. So very surprised about that. And again, they do that in this game. I feel like they played better. They definitely played better in this game. They shot 40% from 3, and they took a lot more threes in this one. And the Clippers sort of didn't show up in this game. It was one of those meh games for the Clippers. Westbrook going 3 of 10, only 8 points. Kawhi Leonard 7 of 18. James Harden 4 of 13, and no Paul George. So they weren't at 100%, so I guess it makes sense that they weren't able to come out with this win. They're getting new jerseys, by the way, so and a new arena and a new logo, all of that. They're getting a complete rebrand, so we'll see like if this rebrand will change the Clippers' mentality, or if they'll just stay as being the old Clippers that just blow leads in the playoffs. We'll see about that, but with that, we're out of time with this third segment. So join me for the fourth segment, where I go over the NBA power rankings that were released just a few hours ago. So I will be right back after this short break to talk about those power rankings, and we'll talk about both the last week ones, and we'll talk about the new ones now and like what's changed. So I will be right back. Thank you guys for tuning in to the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this final segment, we are going to be looking at the NBA power rankings and what that could mean, and just where they are now compared to where they were last year, and my personal opinions on that matter. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull up the window right here. So this is for, hold on just one second. Let me just fix that real quick. There we go. So this is for, these rankings are from last week. So these aren't the rankings from this week yet. We're going to look at the ones from last week. As you can see, like the due date over there, it was from last week. And then we'll see, like, I'll give, like, what I think is going to change given, like, what I've seen throughout this past week. And then we'll take it from there. So let me just go ahead and, like, make this smaller just so, like, I can be sure to, like, I can see the chat and whatnot. But essentially, we're going to look down. So the Boston Celtics, I have a feeling that the Celtics, like, they've been number one, and they're going to stay number one. There's nothing that they haven't given any reason why they shouldn't stay number one. So I believe they're going to stay in the same spot that they were just in. The Minnesota Timberwolves, they might. I don't know. I feel like the Timberwolves, like, they might just they might go down because they did lose to the Clippers, so they might go down a little bit in the rankings. I'm not entirely sure. And the Clippers, I have a feeling that they're going to go back up in the second spot just because, like, they're the Clippers right now, and they've been on a tear with the team that they've had. Granted, never mind. They might stay in the exact same spot now that I think about it because, again, they did lose to the the Kings, as I was talking about previously. So that might have an overall effect. That might have an overall effect on their rankings and whatnot, and I feel like that might just keep them there in that third spot. The Cavs, I feel like they might either stay at 4 or move down to 5, just because, like, you know, that doesn't really make any. I don't see the Cavs moving all the way up to, like, in the top 3. I just don't see it. Like, when they moved up to the top 3, I was incredibly surprised, but, like, I just don't. I don't see it whatsoever. And like, it's really, really tough. So, regardless, like, let's move on. Let's move on to the next one. The OKC. Maybe they move up, considering they were on a 5-game winning streak at one point. Like, they might move up all the way to 4 and replace Cleveland in those standings. The Denver Nuggets, I feel like the Denver Nuggets should be moved all the way back up into the top 3. Jokic was on a tear, so I have a feeling that they're going to move all the way back up into the top 3. And the Mavericks, I think they're going to stay where they are right now. I think they're in a really comfortable spot in the power rankings, given with, like, what Luka's doing and what the team's doing. Phoenix Suns, I think they're going to stay where they are as well because, like, again, like, they haven't really shown much where they should, like, change that ranking, and they haven't really shown much where they should, like, get rid of that ranking, if that makes sense. And the Pelicans are 9th. I don't know. I think they might be replaced by the Bucks because the Bucks recently, they just won their last 2 games. So I feel like maybe the Bucks are going to go back up into that 9th spot. And maybe even higher, but I wouldn't be surprised. And the Knicks immediately they're in the 10th spot. So the Bucks aren't even in the top. The Bucks aren't even in the top 10. They're down all the way to 11. And the Knicks, they moved down all the way. So obviously, since the Knicks were, like, they're going through injuries and whatnot, they've been struggling recently. Not really struggling, but it's like they haven't been getting the easy wins that they were getting before when they had all of those players in the lineup. So their power rankings are going to, like, go down just a little bit, but I don't think it's anything to, like, lose sleep over if you're a Knicks fan. So let's go ahead and look at the power rankings for this week and how they've changed. in based on and how they've changed for like. So looking at this, I feel like the Denver Nuggets definitely moved all the way back up into the top 3 just because they're on the thumbnail. So let's see. Boston's number 1. Yep, figured Boston is going to stay number 1. Like, I mean, look at that record. That record is absolutely insane. And the gap between the Eastern Conference, like from the 1 to the 2, it's ridiculous. And they're clear-cut the best team in the Eastern Conference as of right now. Minnesota, they stayed in the same spot. So, I mean, granted, yes, they also, like, you can look at that record as well. Another great record for another good team. So, while I thought that they were going to move down, I'm not really surprised that they didn't move at all. Let's see. OKC. Okay, they moved. I'm surprised that they moved all the way back up, I guess, because, like, they have the same record as the T-Wolves. So, maybe the Nuggets moved all the way back up, and they're right below OKC. But I personally, like, I don't think, like, I don't think that OKC is that good. Like, I think the Cavs are actually a better team than OKC as of right now. But given how, like the Cavs have been playing and the experienced players that they have on their roster, I think that they'd be a much better playoff team than this OKC team. Now going down, the Clippers, they moved down to 4. So where are the Nuggets? Why aren't the Nuggets up in this top 4? I don't agree with that whatsoever. Like, the Denver Nuggets, they just, again, like, they were the former champs. And, like, I understand, like, it's deep in the regular season now to be worried about that kind of stuff. But still, that is the team to beat in the playoffs. And I have a feeling, like, and given how they haven't really been losing that many, like, big games, and that they've been playing, like, at some great basketball, it's like, no, I don't get that. So, I mean, okay, right, as I say that, they're in this top 5. But they're at the bottom of the top 5. I don't agree with that. Their spot needs to be, I think them and the OKC, I feel like they should flip-flop spots. Because, again, I just think Denver is just the much more experienced and the much better team between all of those teams. So, moving on, we go the Cleveland Cavaliers. They moved all the way down from 4 to 6. So they were at 3 like a few weeks ago. Then they moved down to 4, and then they moved back down to 6. So obviously, like in the power rankings, it looks like they were more. It looks like for Cleveland, they're affected in the power rankings just based on how often the media talks about them. And right now, the media hasn't really been talking about them recently. So it makes sense how they go down in the box. It makes sense how they go down in the power rankings and whatnot. Like they lost to the 76ers without Joel Embiid, and they also lost to the Orlando Magic. And again, like these games, like they beat the Wizards, but those beating the Wizards with a team with that record, it's a no-brainer, and it's a little bit disappointing for Cleveland losing to the Sixers. And again, like I said, the Mavericks, they have not moved a spot. I knew they weren't going to move, so I have a feeling that Phoenix is going to be right next. Yep, I was right. Phoenix was not moved at all. And that leaves 2 spots available. I think Bucks. Knew it. Called it. Knew it was going to be the Bucks. Like they've been winning a lot of games recently. I feel like Doc might have figured out what he needs and what the team needs, and I feel like Dame might have might have found his shooting touch at this point. So obviously, we have to see as the season continues and goes on. But the Bucks, obviously, they're still not a team that I think should be trifled with. They have Giannis and they have Dame. Those 2 players, we all know what those 2 players can do on any given night. And just because they're struggling now doesn't mean they're going to struggle in the postseason. So I feel like teams should still be on their toes with these ones. The Knicks, they did not move a spot whatsoever either. They're in 10th. And I think that's fair given how they're still down a few players, and they still need to wait for them to come back and whatnot. But it's a really generous ranking to like give them the 10th spot. I feel like once all of them are healthy, they're gonna move all the way up to Actually, that's a little tough now because I don't. Yeah, they'll move up. They'll move up to 8, and they'll replace Phoenix, and Phoenix will go down to 10, if when the Knicks get their star players. That's what I think is gonna happen, and they might be like neck and. They do have a chance actually to. Actually, now that I think about it, they should go here. They should go where Cleveland is. I think the Knicks are a much better team than Cleveland right now, and because Cleveland, they stayed the same. Like the difference between the lineup from last year and this year, it's more or less the same. The Knicks got better, and the Knicks beat this Cavs team in the postseason. So the Knicks are without a doubt, they're better than the Cleveland Cavaliers. Like there's nothing really to argue for Cleveland because like Cleveland lost to them last year. So the Knicks are definitely better than this Cavs team. And if this Cavs team is going to be ranked higher than Dallas, Phoenix, and Milwaukee, then yeah, the Knicks are better than all of those teams. Like in my personal opinion, I think again, it might just be like the New York hype that's talking, but this Knicks team when they're healthy, I think they're a very serious threat. But you know what? Why don't we go ahead and see Sacramento Kings, they moved up to 11. So maybe the Pelicans are coming right after that. Oh, the Pacers, they move up. I don't know why the Pacers moved up given how they lost yesterday. And I see, that's why because the rankings came out before that Raptors game, and the Pacers just came off of a win against the Dallas Mavericks. So it makes sense that they're at 12, I guess. Again, I really feel like this team should be lower just because their defense is really the difference maker in a lot of these teams. But again, it goes both ways. Their offense is just so much more elite than a lot of the other teams' offense and so much faster. And the Miami Heat, they're 13th. So where are the Pelicans? How did the Pelicans go all the way up in the top 10 and then immediately drop down to what? Top 14? Yeah, look, they were 9th and they immediately go to the 14th spot. That's a very, very low drop for the Pelicans. Then again, a lot of these teams are really good. So I guess I wouldn't really be that offended that that the Kings are over me because the Kings are definitely a really great team. Let's see who's 15th. The Sixers. Why? Why are they at 15th? What are the teams below them? Really? The Magic should be higher than the Sixers. Who else? Golden State definitely should be higher than the Sixers. What? They beat them. The Lakers, even though I'm a vivid I just can't stand the Lakers in that team other than LeBron. They should be up over the Sixers. They definitely the Sixers are bad. And the Bulls, I feel like they should be that's where the Sixers should go. The Sixers should go right here where the Lakers are. Because the rest of the teams below that, actually, I could see them going even farther down, but I'm not going to do that to the Sixers. Definitely not going to do that. But with that, that is the end of the GSMC Basketball Podcast. That's the end of the last segment. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. And as always, I'd like to remind everybody to please remember to tip and to donate to get your comments recognized using the link that is in the description, as well as the link that is displayed below the ticker of every show segment. That is streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network./tip. Helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself, the host, you guys, the viewers. Once again, that is streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network./tip. I am your host, Nelson. Thank you once again, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna